Hey, RetconRaider here, with special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Revenant, Matthew Smith, Alois, Anerdinwarpaint, Dragon Matrix 7, Eerie V23, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, Kazorm, Lima, Nathan Welch Jr., Tomasz, Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, let's get started. And welcome back to Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. As with our second round of Act 3 setup out of the way, we can finally get back into some good old-fashioned dungeon crawling. Or, well, I mean, I guess dungeon crawling wouldn't really be an appropriate term here, would it? This is all above ground. Ruin raiding, I guess? I'm not sure that has quite the same ring, but sure, why not? I do look forward to seeing just how well these impulse rebuilds I implemented actually work out in practice. We've got a trap. Oh, and as of the party shuffle, Waldjif is back to being our primary rogue. Turns out he's got a couple of points on Aru, which was somewhat surprising. Vendor trash. I guess we're headed this way. Oh, hello there. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm interrupting something. Waldjif, why don't you hang back for a second? Right.
I will resist.
Oh, nice opener, Aru. Into the fray.
Retreat is not an option.
Hey, not bad. Huh. Waldjif didn't finish his attack routine. Let's get this guy out of the way. Thank you, Kaz. Drop the Vrock. Hey, look at that. Nicely done, Ember. And Kaz has had his soul enslaved. It's fine, he's got 4. Nice, baby. Yeah, teaming up Regil and Zorm, I was a bit iffy on it, but we're seeing some positive results thus far. Damage is a little lower than I'd like per hit, but it stacks fast. And finish him. Goodness. We hit a mirror image there, but apparently we did it so convincingly he died anyway. You know, as happens. But, yeah, not bad. Not a bad first outing for our new party dynamic. Anerdin's Wrath. This lone scabbard without a blade that belonged inside seems out of place. The overall design is reminiscent of the Anerdin's era and his clerics. The marks on the scabbard suggest that the clerics have died saving people from demons when the world wound opened, despite having lost their powers after the death of their deity. However, even now you can wield the powers once bound to this item. That very much has the feel of a backer-written item to it. Holy Scabbard. When equipped, a Paladin's Smite Evil class ability is modified. Changes the AC bonus from Deflection to Sacred. Okay. That makes it easier to stack. And additionally, the weapon's first attack every round deals 1d4 extra divine damage. Cannot be equipped by evil characters. Very intriguing. So obviously, designed with characters like Seela in mind, it would be a good fit for her, but not much good for the rest of our party, obviously. Not bad. Yeah, we'll toss that to Seela when we get back to town. I would like to keep all of our companions combat ready, if possible. For companion quests, if nothing else. Moving on. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, we might be able to escape past that trigger with some careful maneuvering, but I'm not really confident about that. We'll check the stairs first, see if we can get around behind it. Oh, hello there. I am feeling a maximized fireball, I think. Okay, okay. Not bad. You can actually see the pyro ring factoring in separately there.
Prepare yourself.
Brock just joined the timeline.
Cover me, all right?
Oh, that is not a Brock. That is a Rift Drake.
Desna, guide my hand.
Oof. Yeah, thankfully we're resistant to both fire and acid right now. Courtesy of Waljeff. Okay, alright. Now the drakes. Oh, boy, this guy too, I guess. Why is Waljeff only attacking once? Oh, I see. They slowed us. Nice, nice. Oh my goodness. Ember? You good? She's probably fine. you can just wait right there for a second. See, like I said, she's fine. You guys always worrying about every little scratch or catastrophic dismemberment. Alright, there we go. Not quite mint condition anymore, but I think our ember is still near mint.
Oh, the waiting's never fun.
Ooh. Windmaster Helmet. +4 bonus to initiative. Simple. And you know what? Yeah, I think we can actually make use of that. Riders are almost never targeted over their mounts, barring some very specific circumstances, so if we slap this on Regil, then both he and Zorm will go faster in combat, with minimal trade-off.
You require my counsel. Wise. Decide already.
Ah, right. And see, this will indeed put us right behind that other trap we saw in the hallway. Yeah, we'll check that out right after we have a look at this little courtyard here. This grave is well tended. It is much more recent than the chapel beside it. There is no name on the tombstone, only an elegant butterfly of Desna. Really now. And we just happen to have a worshipper of Desna tagging along with us right now. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Oh, and free boots. Boots of free reign. Permanent freedom of movement. Very nice. I don't suppose we could slap these on one of our mounts. No, I guess not. That hardly seems fair. They just released a movie about a cat that famously wears boots. But fine. That'll help keep Waldjif mobile. And we'll pass the hand-me-downs to Ember, who is looking pretty snazzy there. Maybe that'll help make up for the whole temporary death thing. Demon's Terror. +2 Radiant Flail of Speed, which also gains a +4 attack bonus on its first attack against a new demon. That's actually a pretty decent mix of weapon bonuses, but not much good to us, of course. And we do indeed still need the clapper for this bell, which obviously isn't in this room, so we will continue looking. I guess we'll double back to that blockage we passed. Oh. And there it is. That was quick. Also, I can't help but notice that Zorm and Regil are rushing headlong into a gauntlet of traps. We should probably do something about that.
Pretty good, aren't I? Something wrong?
Nah, you're fine. Now we'll just scooch back through here real quick. And we'll ring that bell. Thanks for coming to the Temple of Desna. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Huzzah! And assuming that Arusha-lies was not exaggerating the effects of that bell, that should now immobilize all remaining demons in this area. Oof, hate these guys. But let's do it. Looks like some other heavy hitters in there too. A Glabrezu and a Retriever. Can we get a fireball in there? Nice, nice. Wow, we actually did some pretty serious damage to one of them. That's the Retriever. Gibraleth's next. Okay, so they are not, in fact, immobilized. And there we go. There's his full axe routine. Gibraleths are immune to sleep. Oh, nice, but we got the Glabrezu. I was not expecting that to work.
Kneel before me.
Oh, I hate the way those guys look. Thank you, Ember. And with that, we are done. Vex? Kaz? There's something slightly off here. Some minor detail that's giving me pause. But man, I'm just so turned around today, I can't quite put my finger on what it might be. Oh well. That's actually pretty awesome. New party build seems to be working out. Aside from that one snafu with the Rift Drakes, of course. Okay, on we go. You know, at this rate, we might actually have time to round out the episode with a bit of crusading once we're done here. Ah, Arusha-lies, my dear. Are you there? And you brought friends? Good, good. All the more for me. The gall! How dare you show up here of all places? Into the fray. Sorry, ma'am. Oh, wow, never mind. We knocked her down, but we did not even put a dent in her health. Oh, she's a blood rager.
Make your peace.
Sorry, ma'am. Regil? Okay, and now we're through the blood rage. Oh! Wow, Ember is in rare form today. It's gotta be the boots. And we are done. Stop! Stop! What are you doing, you reprobates? The beaten hag cowers on the rocks. Gone is the terrifying monster you were just fighting. And in its place is a small and frightened old woman. You sure about that? Why'd you treat an old biddy like me so harshly? Haven't you any shame, you great brutes? Walgif can't take his eyes off the hideous old crone. His teeth are chattering. Sorry, Granny, but you better stay down. You lay there on the stones, or you'll only make it worse for yourself. Don't listen to her. She's just stalling for time. Arusha-lies raises her weapon. What do you know about the demons with the strange abilities? Where are they coming from? Speak! What demons? What are you on about? Under Arusha-lies' cold gaze, the hag's face breaks into a grandmotherly smile. Ah, now, those demons. Wouldn't they be friends of yours, Aru, my dear? What are you picking on poor old me for, then? I'd tell you everything I know, but you'd know far more than me on that score. The color drains from Arusha-lies' face, and the hag's smile grows wider, stretching from ear to ear. My little chicken, don't tell me you haven't told your new toys all that. Kept it to yourself, did you? The hag bursts into screeching laughter, before turning her gaze on you. Take pity on an old woman. Let me go before any more harm's done. You'd better have a word with your little demoness about those demons. You liar! I've never been to the Ivory Sanctum. Arusha-lies' desperate outburst is drowned out by another round of cackling from the hag. Yeah, I gotta say, Arusha-lies, that's a pretty embarrassing rookie mistake right there. I thought you were good at this. Where is it you say you've never been, eh? Where? Like you haven't been sniffing around it, seeing who comes and who goes? You didn't see all that? I suppose you don't even know the password neither, The hag looks at you. Your demon girl's lying through her teeth, as per usual. Yeah, look, Aru, I'm not trying to tag team with the 40-foot woman here, but it has been pretty obvious since the jump that you haven't been completely truthful. You don't understand. Arueshalae drops her gaze. I lied to you. I used you. I could have told you where to look for those demons right away. But I needed someone who could help me get rid of the hag. When I was freed from the dungeons of Dresden, the demon set her on my trail, and I could not have dealt with her single-handedly. Hearing this, the old woman lets out a screeching cackle that shakes her whole body. What are you laughing at? It doesn't matter what I've done. You won't be leaving here alive. A demon using lies and manipulation to get what it wants. This does not surprise me. What does surprise me is that you have done this in an attempt to prove that you are somehow different from her. Thank you, Regil, as apt as always. But, yeah, let's hold off on the murder for a second, if y'all don't mind. I'd like to get a better idea of what exactly is going on here. Arueshalae gives you a reluctant nod, but doesn't lower her weapon. All right, but don't let this lying filth confuse you. I'm the lying filth here, am I? Now that's the pot calling the kettle black. Arusha-lie. Ha ha ha! You know what? That wasn't bad. I'll give that, like a 6 out of 10. That's some decent wordplay. Also, shut up before I stab you. What can you tell me about the Ivory Sanctum? What is it I'm supposed to know? Where am I supposed to know it from, eh? I'm no demon, just a humble hag. I wander the forests, I make friends with the creeping, crawling things. I gather herbs, and I live in peace. Stop lying, you old boot. You've been there. I saw you with my own eyes. But who would let me in? I'm no demon, and only demons are allowed in there. And higher-ups from the cultists. All I know is that they have their own spellcasters there, and they work their magic over them. How exactly they give the demons their powers, that's a great secret. And if ye want to discover it, that means ye have to go there. Where it is, well, you'll just have to ask your little demon here. She knows, better than most. The hag murmurs something under her breath that sounds like the first lines of a spell. And there it is, our sudden but inevitable betrayal. Wait, what are you doing? Are you casting something? Trying to trick us, is she? It won't work. Brutal. With unmatched speed, Arueshalae attacks the hag. She screeches her last rasping cackle, which soon turns into a strangled gurgle. Arueshalae's eyes are plaintive as she holds your gaze. There is much I have to explain, to confess. But first, please, there's something I want to show you. Come, it's not far. Back to that tombstone, I assume? Yep, that makes sense. Arueshalae approaches the grave. It is small but surprisingly well maintained, given the surrounding squalor and neglect. Arueshalae touches the cold stone, decorated with a Desnan butterfly, like she is greeting an old friend. Silently, she turns to you. She retrieves a map from her bag, makes a mark on it, and holds it out to you. First things first. Here, I wasn't lying to you about this. That's where you'll find the Ivory Sanctum, and in it, the secret of the demons with the strange powers. The entrance is hidden under a pile of skulls. I don't know how to open it, and I have never been inside. But cultists enter it somehow, which means that you can find a way to get inside. Thanks, Aru. I do appreciate this. Even if it did take us a roundabout route to get to it. The succubus shakes her head. I lied to you. You trusted me, and I used you to get rid of the hag. This doesn't assuage my guilt. But it is the least I can do. So, who's buried here? I assume that's somehow related? It's my last victim. She was a priestess of Desna. I seduced her and drained her soul. She died in my arms, and I decided to bask in her final reveries, so I dove into her fading mind. Dreams are Desna's domain. The goddess noticed my sacrilege, but for some reason she showed me mercy instead of punishment. She opened my eyes to who I was and who I could be. When I returned to my senses, the first thing I did was bury my final victim here, and to make a vow before her grave that I would atone for everything I had done. I didn't even know who she was. I seduced her, deceived her, and killed her, and she saved my soul. Arueshalae wipes her eyes. If only I could die and give her back her life. But I can't, Vex. All I can do is live on and help those who are still alive. So how'd you know Jaruunicka would be waiting for you here? When I was freed from Dresden, the demon set her on my trail. She failed to catch me, but she took a hostage of a sort. Arueshalae once again runs her fingers over the granite tombstone. She threatened to corrupt this grave if I didn't come here and surrender. I knew I could not defeat her on my own, so I used you. I used a lie to get you here so you would help me kill her. Forgive me. I'm sorry. Yeah, look, don't beat yourself up over this. I've certainly had worse excuses to kill people. This place, the fortress and the bell tower, I saw them in the dreams of the person lying in this grave. She was on her way here for the bell. She wanted to take it from here and return it to the Crusaders in Canabris. But she never made it here. Because she met me. I killed her and I devoured her dreams, or rather, they devoured me. That's why, when I re-emerged from the dream realm, I buried her here. I thought it was the right thing to do. I've wanted to return the bell to the Crusaders for a long time, but... She brings a hand to her face. The barest brush and the bell burns my impure fingers. You know, the thought does occur that you could have just brought up the bell. That sounds like a really great excuse to come out here. Or you could have just asked for help. I mean, that probably would have worked too. I was afraid. Afraid that you would refuse if there was nothing in it for you. I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, and... I am a demon, Vex. For centuries, it was all I knew. If you wanted something, you got it by lying or by force. Luring you here was so easy, so natural. Lies and manipulation, they are my native language, one I have spoken my entire life. Asking for a favor? Now that is a foreign notion that I have only begun to learn. Don't think I'm trying to justify what I did. I know my lie was despicable. I knew that perfectly well when I lied to you. I knew it was a step backward, back to the old Arusha-lies. And I still did it. There is no excuse for it. I just want you to understand me. Yeah, it's fine. I get it. So, what are you going to do with me? Arusha-lies waits with bated breath. her eyes locked on yours. You see fear and sadness there, and also the tiniest flicker of hope. I sincerely hope the Fifth Crusade will not be the latest casualty in the long line of endeavors that have ended in ruin because someone decided to trust the word of a demon. Don't be silly, Regil will be part of the short line of endeavors that have ended in success because we trusted a demon. Technically, 2 demons. Look, Aru, I wasn't kidding when I said you don't have to sweat this. I worship Callistria. Short-sighted vengeance is like number 3 on her list of holy virtues. Honestly, if anything, I should be thanking you. This was fun. We should do it more often. But I added another black mark to my soul. I tricked you. You could have been hurt. I'll never forgive myself for that. And I'll never do anything like this, ever again. Well, that is a shame. I feel like you're wasting a lot of potential there, Aru. But, fair enough. Alright, let's go collect our loot off Jaruunicka's body. We got dragged away before we could actually do that. What is that? Oh, an S-stock. Interesting. Crippling Kiss. A +4 keen S-stock. On crit, the enemy suffers a -2 penalty to attack, savings throws, and skill checks for the rest of combat. But the effect does not stack. Well, that's not bad at all, especially bumped up to +4. Double crit range on an S-stock is, of course, 30% per swing, just like Kukre's. But as usual, just sales fodder for us. Quarterstaff +5. And an Amulet of Circulating Blood. Whenever the wearer is blood raging, they gain fast healing 5. Wow, that would be fantastic for a blood rager, which we are not. Man, that would be pretty incredible paired with Endless Rage. Also, I just realized we have a level up pending. What is that, level 11? Yeah, level 11's a big one, as I recall. I think that's what I have listed in my notes as the improved crit level up, yeah. We've got time to kill. We burned through this place a lot faster than I thought we would, so let's finish poking around the nooks and crannies. We'll make sure we're not missing anything. Then we'll hit the pause button, I'll flip through my notes, make a few adjustments, and we'll knock out the level up while we're here. More vendor trash. Old Sarkorian diary in a burned binding. Interesting. Yeah, I think that one might be safe to set aside for now. And get to it in a future reader episode. Which will probably be pretty soon, because I think we've actually got 5 or 6 books at this point, plus a handful of relics. Waltif?
I'm here. Where else would I be?
Thank you. Oh, and that nets us a belt of physical perfection +2. Very nice. Wow, there was some really nice stuff here. Alright, folks, I think that is it. Let's hit the pause button real quick. I'm going to give this place a once-over just to make sure we didn't miss any stashes or anything. Then I'll grab my notes, figure out what we're doing with the level 11, and we'll run through it real quick. That should also hopefully give you a narrow window to lob feedback at me and whatnot on the level up choices before I finalize that stuff for episode 60. We'll be right back. And we are back. Alright, looks like most of our choices this time around are pretty straightforward. But we do have a few oddball twists and turns in here to go over. Let's see if we can jam through this in about, let's say, 10 or 12 minutes. Then we'll call it an episode and y'all can share your thoughts. So, first up, we of course have Vex. Vex is taking his 7th level in Hunter, which nets him +1 base attack and access to his first 3rd level spells. Skills are pretty much set at this point, but it is worth noting that he is our current lead on nature lore checks. Technically athletics and mobility as well, but only for checks that can't be made by our animal companions. As for our new feat, I wasn't kidding. This is indeed our improved crit level up. We'll be grabbing improved crit for just about 2/3 of the party, both to improve our overall damage output, but also to increase the likelihood of more rolling crit storms. As for new spells, there's not really much we need from the level 1 list at this point. Cure Light Wounds feels pretty trivial when we're sitting on a stack of 100+ healing potions. So we'll just grab Unbreakable Heart for emergencies. Though sadly, I think they did finally patch it, so it's not quite as over-effective as it used to be. Thankfully, our picks for level 3 are a little more interesting. After giving it some thought, I'm thinking we'll grab Greater Chameleon Stride and Greater Magic Fang. Both are pretty ideal for mounted characters, since Chameleon Stride will give both Vex and Kaz the equivalent of a blur spell with a single cast, while Magic Fang of course grants a long-lasting damage buff that does partially stack with the Amulet of Agile Fists that Kaz is currently wearing. And that is it for Vex. Some pretty nice bumps at this level, with the biggest one obviously being the doubled crit range on his Kukris. We should have a lot of fun with that. Next, we're jumping over to Kaz, since he's effectively just an extension of Vex anyway. Kaz hits level 11, which nets him +1 base attack and a new feat. Not much to say on skills. He technically beats Vex on mobility, but only when it comes to environmental skill checks, as opposed to dialogue-triggered skill checks. As for his new feat, in keeping with the theme, we're grabbing improved crit bite. Not as dramatic a bump for Kaz as it was for Vex, but it is still a 10% chance per chomp that he'll trigger or prolong a crit storm. Plus, as a leopard, every bite attack also has a pretty hefty chance to trip whoever he's currently busy chewing on. And that is it for Kaz. After that, we've got Regil, our new resident raptor wrangler. Regil is taking his 5th level in Beast Rider, which nets him a +1 base attack, as well as the Banner class ability. That one's kind of interesting, granting a passive +2 morale bonus on saves versus fear, and a +1 to hit with charge attacks to all nearby allies. Not exactly game-breaking, but it's an always-on passive aura, so I'm certainly not complaining. With skills, we are still keeping him focused on Persuasion as his primary and Mobility as his secondary. I'm keeping our options open for Cornigan Smash and or Dread Carnage. Mobility has almost caught up at this point, so we'll start bumping Perception as his tertiary skill once we hit level 13. Again, not exactly a game changer, but At least it is a skill that we might get a little use out of. As for our feat, we are of course picking up improved crit. As with Zorm, this won't be a huge boost to his crit range, but it is still a nice little added chance to trigger or extend crit storms. And that is pretty much it for Regil himself. Fairly tame overall, but we do still have Zorm to tend to as well. His level up is a lot more straightforward, since he's lagging one level behind the rest of the party. That means he does not get improved crit just yet, but he does get a slightly more varied assortment of bonuses, +1 base attack, +1 reflex, and +1 will. We also continue pumping up his intimidation, listed here as a somewhat lackluster and misleading +13, but once you factor in his feats and equipment, it actually gets bumped up to a pretty respectable +23. That's it for Zorm. Next up, we've got Woljif, who I impulsively turned into an axe thrower, just so I could use some gear that we don't actually have yet. Honestly though, despite the impulsive respecs, it doesn't really change his build all that much. He grabs his 10th level in Eldritch Scoundrel, netting +1 base attack and +1 reflex, as well as his first 4th level spell slots. He also now technically has access to advanced rogue talents, but that won't matter until we get our next talent slot, which is level 13. Skills are skills, we're keeping him focused on the usual rogue stuff, with a side of Arcana for scroll scribing. As previously mentioned, he is our current lead on Trickery, but he's also rather surprisingly taken the lead on Arcana as well, so I've shuffled our gear accordingly. Feats got a little tricky, because he's got a ton of decent options, but it ultimately ended up boiling down to avoiding the ones that dinged his throwing accuracy. While I would love to eventually grab Rapid Shot, I think that's going to have to wait until we're closer to hitting Mythic Rank 4, so we can immediately stack Mythic Rapid Shot on top of it to remove the -2 onus. Likewise, while stuff like Deadly Aim and Improved 2 Weapon are both tempting as well, I'm holding off on them for at least a little longer, until we can shore up his 2 hits with better gear. All of that is basically a really long-winded way of saying that we are instead grabbing, you guessed it, Improved Crit Throwing Axe. Granted, it's not as big a deal for Woljif since ranged weapons won't trigger or be triggered by a rolling crit storm, but that's still a little extra damage whenever it procs. Plus, we'll theoretically be getting some decent on-crit throwing axes later down the line. And it does leave the door open for things like Blinding Crit. As for new spells, I'll say right off the bat that we are not grabbing Dimension Door or Greater Invisibility, even though they'd normally be my go-tos, because we can get both of those from Nenio next time we're hanging out in Dresden. Instead, we will be grabbing Greater False Life, a spell Nenio does not have, which will help keep Woljif alive out in the field. We'll also be grabbing Communal Protection from Energy as well. That has a 24-hour duration with Greater Enduring, and at the end of the day, Woljif is still our primary arcane buffer. That's it for Woljif. Some nice new offensive boosts, some nice new defensive spells. Overall, a pretty decently balanced set of upgrades. Next up, we've got Ember, who is still level drained. I'll take care of that later. For now, though, she gains her 11th level in Stigmatized Witch. That nets her a new feat and a stack of new spell slots to play with. Not much to say on skills. Sadly, she's been outclassed on both Arcana and Persuasion at this point, but she is still our lead on Religion. Not, I suppose, that that's really saying much, considering we basically ignored it on everyone else. Not intentionally, it just sort of shook out that way once we dropped Lan. Then we've got feats, and I did end up going back and forth on this one for a while. Stuff like Arcane and Greater Elemental Focus are both pretty tempting to help keep our spells effective against tougher foes. There's also a lot to be said for Weapon Focus, which can help with accuracy of our ranged touch attacks. However, in going through the last couple of months' worth of patch notes, I noticed they finally fixed the Friendly Fire issue with Metamagic Bolster, and that immediately makes it a must-have for any serious spellslinger. That is 20 extra damage on a Fireball spell, plus potential splash. That's just too much of a boost to pass up. Now, I'm not sure we'll be investing in any other metamagic feats moving forward. We only have so many feat slots left after all. But this does make it slightly more likely. Stuff like Reach or Selective Spell would certainly help us get a little more bang out of Bolster. After that, we've got a giant pile of new spell slots. For level 2, we're grabbing Bone Shaker, which bulks up our selection of Necromancy spells a little. It's also bolster friendly, so while its damage output is a little on the low side, that's still a respectable 8d6 plus 16, with 16 splash damage to other nearby foes. Not too shabby. For level 3, we're going slightly off-script and grabbing Heroism, since she's one of the only people in our current party who can actually cast it. Waljev can also cast it, but this will let him focus on some of the other spells in his arsenal, like Haste and Communal Resist. Those level 3 spell slots are prime real estate, and his spell slots are pretty limited until we hit Mythic Rank 5. For level 4, Ember will, of course, be grabbing Greater False Life, for much the same reason Waljev did. I think the Drake incident pretty clearly illustrated that we need to take some steps towards better safeguarding our wizardly waif, and this will certainly help in that regard. Which brings us to our level 5 spell slot. And this one is pretty fun. We are grabbing Racking Ray. It turns out that Bolster does work with spells that inflict ability damage, so that will eventually let us use Racking Ray as a sort of mini AoE ability damage spell, striking a main target for heavy dex and strength damage, while also splashing extra ability damage onto other nearby foes. At least in theory. And that is it for Ember. Lots of fun new spells to play with, plus a massive offensive boost with Bolster Spell. The only real downside is that I'm now going to have to spend half an hour rearranging all of her hotbars, and it's going to be a nightmare to look at, but I suppose that's a small price to pay for absolute arcane annihilation. Next up, we've got Darren. And you know, I was going to save this surprise for later, but as aforementioned, our recent Drake encounter has really highlighted that we need to take extra steps to protect our precious Prestidigitator. So, to that end, we are finally spending that mythic ability point on Darren, which we will be using to grab Second Mystery. Nature. You can probably see where this is going. Popping back over to his level up menu, Darren will of course continue being an Oracle, which nets him +1 base attack and a boatload of new spell slots, plus a new Revelation slot. Skills are skills, not much to say here, though Darren does securely maintain his slot as the party diplomat by a pretty hefty margin. As for feats, I'll admit I was kind of on the fence with this one. Nothing was really jumping out at me, and it felt kind of lame to just grab extra channels again, so I ended up snagging Wings instead. That's a nice little defensive buff for those rare occasions when an enemy gets within striking distance. And it is a feat that I rarely get to take, since I basically never run Aasimars, so it had the novelty factor going for it. I'll also note it adds some actual angel wings to Darren's character model, which is a fun little added bonus. Not enough on its own to justify taking the feat, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't factor it into my decision. And then, the part you almost certainly saw coming. Our new revelation is going to be Animal Companion. This was actually how I was originally hoping we could keep Zorm in the party after Land's departure, but it ended up being a little more limited than I thought it would be. We can only choose between horse and wolf, hence why Regil ended up getting respect into a raptor rider instead. Still, this actually does end up working out because we have a recently orphaned horse and a heavily neglected wolf in our extended party. After giving it some thought, as much fun as it would be to bring Law back in, I ended up going with Helpful instead, in part because I wanted another tripper in the party, but also because I thought it was funnier if Darren effectively stole Camelia's animal companion. Tagging Helpful into the party will help shore up our front lines, especially since, like Kaz, Helpful will get a free trip attack against enemies who try to scoot past him. The main downside is that we don't have Mythic Beast on Darren yet, and we won't for a while. That'll be Mythic Rank 5. But Helpful should still make a halfway decent meat shield, and it turns out that you can still trip enemies even if you're not biting them hard enough to do any actual damage. not much to say on his build. I mostly just copied what I did with Kaz with a few minor tweaks. Back to Darren. We've got 4 new spell slots to play with, so let's run through those real quick. Our level 2 slot went towards Hold Person. We're not really set up for offensive casts, but I figured it would be handy for those rare occasions where we need to lock down a human cultist or something. Very situational, but a nice option to have in a pinch. For level 3 and level 4, we're grabbing Communal Resist and Communal Protect, mainly just to help take some pressure off Waljiff. Darren doesn't have Mythic Extended, so his casts will only last 10 minutes, but that's still good for quick spot casting for single fights or emergency situations. Then at level 5, we're grabbing Raise Dead, just so we have a proper contingency for those rare occasions when we can't just breathe some life back into the recently deceased. I'm not sure if this one is actually Mythic Brewing compatible. Breath of Life is, so it tracks that Raise Dead should be as well. It would be nice if we could stockpile a few potions of Raise Dead for emergencies, but I'll have to look into that to make sure it actually works. And that is pretty much it for Darren. We already touched on Helpful. We're not going to go through the minutia of her build. I will say, though, that I was a little conflicted on whether or not to invest 2 of her feat slots into medium barding proficiency. With Kaz and Zorm, we've really just been leaning on extended mage armor, but Helpful has a lower dexterity than they do, so barding just seemed to make slightly more sense. It nets her an extra 3 points of AC at level 11. Granted, that will become less of an issue when we eventually grab Mythic Beast and slap it on top of her. But I'll also admit it's just kind of nice to actually have a character who can use the various magic bardings that we're finding during our travels. The alternative is to dump the barding proficiencies, free up those 2 slots, and grab Weapon Focus Bite and Improved Crit Bite slightly earlier than otherwise planned. But feel free to let me know what y'all think. I've currently got her set to use medium barding, but I could go either way. Like I said, a lot of it really just comes down to short-term benefits and wanting to get some use out of all this magic gear. But for now, we are finally wrapping things up with Arusha-lies. This is thankfully a very simple and straightforward level up. She grabs her 11th in Espionage Expert, which nets her +1 base attack, access to 3rd level ranger spells, and the Quarry class ability. Quarry is kind of interesting because at a glance it grants some pretty solid bonuses. +2 insight on attacks and damage, plus auto-confirming critical hits, but only on the specific quarried target. On top of that, we also have Aru kitted with those gloves we pulled off Mogla back at the Ruined Chapel, which automatically sickens and further debuffs quarried targets. The downside, though, is that using Quarry means she can't attack in the same round. It's a standard action. She will eventually be able to Quarry as a free action, but not until level 19. At that point, I can see using Quarry pretty much all the time. I'm just not sure how much use we'll be getting out of it until then. As for skills, not a lot to say here. Aru's skills were pretty much already set when we got her, so we'll just turn them all up to 11. While she's outclassed in Trickery, Arcana, and Persuasion at this point, she is still our lead on Stealth and Perception. Her new feat will, of course, be Improved Crit, Longbow. I honestly would have taken that a little sooner, but we've been running around with a perfectly serviceable Keen Longbow for a while now. Still, this will open up our options for other non-Keen Longbows that we might stumble across in the future. I'm sure it's just a matter of time before we find something really nice to switch off to. And that is it for Aru. Nothing all that exciting, but it does make for some fairly solid offensive upgrades. Which means that we are now done, aside from the part where I have to spend a couple of hours rearranging all of our hotbars off screen. Yay. I see we're coming up on the 20-minute mark, so ran slightly longer than intended. That's fine, I guess this will just be another deluxe-sized episode. But that said, as always, feel free to weigh in on what you think about my fairly off-the-cuff leveling decisions. We're obviously leaning pretty heavily into the whole crit storm thing, but, you know, it's worked out pretty well for us so far. Plus, you know, it helps that I also feel like they're a lot of fun. A lot of these decisions I'm making just kind of lean into the idea of increasingly wacky battlefield shenaniganery. Anyway, we'll go ahead and hit the pause button for now. I'll go ahead and take care of all that bookkeeping and whatnot, and we will pick up here next time. We're still in pretty good shape. Nothing here at Greengates really slowed us down all that much. Aside from maybe that one part where Ember got draked across the coals, but, you know, ignoring that, I think we're good to go on Molten Scar. See you then. Oh, and remember, although I do love playing Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, you can find out more about the game by visiting the official website, the official social media feeds, or the official store pages. And if you'd like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things, or maybe even check out the Patreon. Links are in the description.
Something wrong?